All right, so today we're diving deep into learning organizations,
Uh-huh.
not just any learning organization, but one that really thrives on growth and change and
Yeah.
adaptation, and of course,
A
learning.
lot of learning,
A
yeah.
whole lot of learning.
We've got a really interesting set of sources here.
Yeah.
Psychology, leadership,
Mhm.
motivation. We've even got some art in here.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide range, but what's fascinating is
Yeah.
they all seem to agree
Oh.
that it's not just about, cramming information. It's about mindset. It's like
Uh-huh.
almost training your brain
Uh-huh.
to be more flexible, like a muscle.
Okay, I like that. So
Yeah.
like flexing those mental muscles.
Yeah.
All right, so where do we even begin with this whole learning organization thing?
Right.
One of the sources, Life's Learnings, 1 to 510,
Yeah.
really focuses on this idea of potential.
It's interesting. The source says that success isn't about, chasing those external rewards
Oh.
like money or status. It's more about tapping into that potential we all have,
Right.
that capacity for growth and achievement.
That reminds me of that Henry Ford quote.
Oh, yeah.
There is no man living who isn't capable of doing more than he thinks he can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes we really underestimate ourselves.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, those limiting beliefs can really hold us back,
Yeah.
not just individually, but as a whole organization.
Right.
So this source is suggesting that,
Yeah.
fostering a learning organization starts with recognizing that potential in each person on your team.
Okay, so it's about really nurturing that potential.
Yeah,
But what about the folks who are doing the nurturing?
right.
Another source, Life's Learnings 3 to 711,
Mm-hmm.
jumps into qualities of effective leadership, specifically in the context of these learning organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What stood out to you from this one?
Well, one thing that really stood out
Yeah.
was this idea that leadership is not about having all the answers or, wielding power.
Oh,
It's more about cultivating a certain attitude
okay.
and a commitment to continuous learning and growth.
So less about barking orders and more about leading by example.
Exactly.
It can't be that simple, though, can it?
Well, it does take work.
Right.
Life Learnings 3711 gets into some specifics.
Okay.
And one that I thought was really interesting was this idea of spending 80% of your people time with the top 20% of your team.
So you're saying focus on the high performers and let the rest figure it out.
No, no, no.
Seems a bit harsh, doesn't it?
Not at all. It's not about neglecting anyone. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that
Yeah.
your top performers are often the most eager to learn and grow.
Uh-huh.
So by investing in them,
Yeah.
you're actually creating a ripple effect. They can become mentors and share their knowledge.
Right, so it's building a team of leaders,
Exactly.
not just a team of followers.
Yeah.
I like that a lot better.
Yeah.
And speaking of building,
Yeah.
too, that Source Life Learnings 3711 dives into this concept of a teaching organization.
Right. Right.
So what does that even mean?
Well, think of it this way.
Yeah.
In a traditional organization, knowledge is often seen as power,
Okay.
something to be hoarded and protected.
Right, right.
But in a teaching organization,
Yeah.
knowledge is shared freely.
Okay.
Learning is baked into the workplace itself.
So it's not just about like workshops or, sending people to a conference or whatever.
Right. It's
Okay.
about the systems, the processes,
Oh.
even the physical environment.
So you're saying you design the organization itself to be a teaching organization.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, and that goes beyond just having a learning management system
Right.
or sending people to conferences. It's
Right.
about creating opportunities for informal learning, encouraging mentorship,
Uh-huh.
making it easy to share expertise.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's about so much more than just providing information.
Right.
It's really shifting that entire culture.
Absolutely. And this source also highlights the importance of continuous feedback in
Okay.
a learning organization.
Uh-huh.
So we're not just talking about those dreaded annual performance reviews.
Oh, those?
It's more about
Yeah.
ongoing open communication,
Right.
about how everyone can learn and grow.
Okay, so feedback is crucial.
Yeah.
But what about those performance reviews?
Yeah.
I feel like most people just dread them.
Oh, yeah.
Life's Learnings Part 3, 12325 suggests just getting rid of them altogether.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's radical.
Yeah.
What do they propose instead?
Well, instead of focusing on past performance,
Mhm.
which can feel very judgmental,
Yeah.
they advocate for turning those reviews into interactive coaching sessions.
Oh,
So think of it as a collaborative process
Think
where
so.
you're helping your team set goals, identify areas for development,
right.
unlock their potential.
So less you did this wrong and more,
Right.
how could we work together to help you excel?
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that, but what about accountability?
Accountability is still there.
Okay,
It's just framed differently.
right.
It's about creating a culture where everyone is committed to their own growth and development,
Right.
and they feel supported in that journey.
Okay, so we've talked about potential, leadership, feedback, even getting rid of those performance reviews
Yeah,
in favor of these coaching sessions.
right.
It's all great stuff.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, what about self-confidence?
Ooh, that's a good one.
We want to encourage people to be confident in their abilities, right?
Absolutely.
Life Learning's 151 makes a really interesting point, though,
Oh, yeah.
about balancing self-confidence with humility.
Interesting.
They argue that true leadership requires both.
I see.
So you're not saying be arrogant or, think you know everything.
Right.
You're saying recognize your strengths,
Yeah.
but be open to learning from others.
Exactly. This source suggests that humility
Okay,
allows leaders to be more open to feedback,
right.
more willing to admit when they're wrong,
Uh-huh.
and more likely to seek help from others,
Right.
which creates a more collaborative and ultimately more effective learning environment.
Okay. That makes sense. You need that balance to create a culture where
Yeah,
everyone feels comfortable asking questions, admitting mistakes,
right.
sharing ideas freely.
Absolutely.
But how do you actually cultivate
Yeah.
that kind of positive energy within a team?
Well, Life Learning's 3711 gets into some really interesting strategies
Oh,
for creating positive emotional energy.
okay.
One of them is using videos.
Videos.
Yeah,
That's
to
interesting.
inspire and motivate.
What kind of videos are we talking about?
Well, this source specifically mentions a video called Jocko's Good.
Uh-huh.
It's a really powerful message about resilience and determination,
Okay.
but it could also be something lighthearted and fun,
Right.
something to boost morale
Yeah.
and encourage teamwork.
Right.
The key is to choose something that resonates with your team and your organization's values.
All right. I can see that.
Yeah,
But what about those team building exercises that everyone kind of loves to hate?
right.
Is there any value in those?
This source actually argues that team building,
Yeah.
when done well,
Okay.
can be a really powerful tool for creating that positive energy and fostering connection.
Okay.
It's not just about awkward icebreakers.
Right. Right.
Or trust falls.
No, I don't think anyone likes those.
No, it's about creating shared experiences,
Yeah.
encouraging communication,
Uh-huh.
building those relationships outside the usual work context.
So even those cheesy team building activities can be beneficial
If they're done right, yeah.
if they're done right.
Yeah,
And this source also emphasizes the importance of the physical environment.
absolutely.
Like even just small changes,
Yeah,
adding some plants,
yeah,
brightening up the office, creating comfortable spaces for collaboration.
right.
You never thought about it that way. Would it make sense?
Yeah,
A dreary office can really bring you down.
absolutely.
This reminds me of this concept of aesthetic mindset we talked about a while back.
Uh-huh.
Didn't that have something to do with how our surroundings can affect us?
You're right. That was the source, your brain on art.
Okay.
It dives into how our environment, the colors, the sounds, the textures,
Uh-huh.
can actually impact our brains and our well-being.
Yeah?
So by cultivating an aesthetic mindset,
Yeah.
we can intentionally design spaces that promote creativity,
Right.
focus, and a sense of well-being.
So it's not just about making the office look nice.
Right.
You're saying it's about understanding how it affects us, how
Exactly.
we think and feel and even learn.
Yeah,
That's really powerful.
it is. And your brain on art also explores the idea that art itself can be a powerful tool for learning and development.
Okay.
It can help us see the world in new ways, make
Uh-huh.
connections between seemingly disparate concepts,
Right.
and even rewire our brains for
Right.
greater creativity and resilience.
So we're talking about bringing art into the workplace,
Yeah,
not just as decoration,
right,
but as a way to really stimulate the brain
right.
and foster that creativity.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Uh-huh.
But this brings up a question.
Okay,
How do you balance the need for structure and order
right.
with the need for creativity and innovation?
That's a great question, and it's something that a lot of organizations struggle with.
Yeah.
One of the sources, the sweet spot,
Okay.
explores this idea of finding the right balance
Yeah.
between comfort and challenge.
Tell me more about that.
So this source argues
Yeah.
that we actually learn and grow the most when we're in that sweet spot
Okay.
between boredom and anxiety.
Right.
Too much comfort and we become complacent
Right.
and disengaged. Too much challenge and we get overwhelmed and stressed.
So it's about finding that optimal level of challenge.
Exactly.
That pushes us outside our comfort zone,
Yeah,
but not too far.
right. Not over the edge.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the sweet spot also delves into the
Okay.
surprising benefits of what they call suffering.
Suffered. Okay.
Yeah, I know it sounds counterintuitive.
A little bit. Yeah.
But they argue that we actually find experiences more enjoyable
Yeah.
if they involve a bit of pain than pleasure.
Pain than pleasure.
I know, it's kind of a strange concept,
Yeah.
but think about it this way.
Okay.
A tough workout
Uh-huh.
followed by a relaxing shower.
Yeah,
The shower feels amazing because of the contrast, right?
right.
It's the same with learning,
Right.
embracing challenges, pushing through those moments of suffering,
Uh-huh.
can make the rewards of accomplishment that much sweeter.
Okay, so encouraging our teams to really embrace challenges,
Yeah,
knowing that the payoff will be even greater because they had to work for it.
exact.
And this all ties back into building that learning organization,
Yeah.
creating a culture where people aren't afraid to take risks,
Uh-huh.
make mistakes, and learn from those experiences.
Absolutely. And this source, the sweet spot, also suggests incorporating a bit of playfulness
Uh,
into the learning process.
okay.
They talk about the power of gamification,
Oh, yeah.
which we see a lot in online learning these days.
Yeah, gamification, adding points, badges, leaderboards, that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Sometimes it feels a little gimmicky.
It can be
Yeah.
if it's not done well,
Right.
but when it's thoughtfully integrated,
Yeah.
it can be really effective
Okay.
because it taps into our natural desire for competition and achievement,
Oh, okay.
making learning feel more like a game than a chore.
So making it more fun and engaging.
Exactly.
But some folks might argue that learning shouldn't always be fun, right?
Right.
Sometimes it needs to be challenging, maybe even a little bit painful.
Absolutely. But the sweet spot makes a fascinating point about
Yeah.
something called flow state.
Flow state.
Have you ever heard of
I
that?
have, yeah.
It's that feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity
Uh-huh.
where time just seems to fly by
Yeah.
and you're just totally immersed in what you're doing.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah,
It's like working on a project you're really passionate about and you just lose track of time.
exactly. And this source argues that we can actually design learning experiences to encourage that flow state
Okay.
by finding that sweet spot between boredom and anxiety.
Right.
The task needs to be challenging enough to hold our attention,
Uh-huh.
but not so difficult that it becomes overwhelming.
Right. It's like finding that perfect difficulty set in a video game.
Exactly.
Too easy, you get bored.
Right.
Too hard, you get frustrated. You
Exactly.
got to have that sweet spot.
You need that just right challenge to keep you hooked.
Yeah, exactly.
And when people are in that flow state, they're not only more engaged,
Uh-huh.
but they're also more likely to retain information
Right.
and develop those new skills.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see how we can incorporate these ideas into a learning organization.
Right.
But let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about something a little more philosophical.
All right.
Several of the sources, like Bittersweet and Faith God,
Uh-huh.
touched on the importance of meaning and purpose,
Yeah.
both in our personal lives and in the workplace.
That's such an important point.
Yeah,
Creating a learning organization isn't just about, acquiring knowledge and skills.
right.
It's also about fostering a sense of purpose.
Okay.
Helping people connect with something larger than themselves.
Bittersweet talks about learning to love who you are,
Yeah.
not just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean in the context of a learning organization?
Well, it's about recognizing
Yeah.
that each individual
Uh-huh.
brings their own unique experiences, perspectives, and values to the table.
Okay.
It's about creating an environment where people feel valued, right, for who they are, not just for what they produce.
So creating that sense of belonging and connection.
Exactly. And when people feel like they belong,
Yeah.
like they're part of something meaningful,
Yeah,
they're more likely to be engaged,
Yeah.
motivated, and committed to their growth.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Faith God dives into the complexities of human affection
Right.
and its potential for both joy and sorrow.
That's an interesting one.
This one kind of threw me for a loop, I have to admit.
Yeah.
What's the connection to creating a learning organization?
Well, it might seem like a stretch at first.
Yeah.
But this source really reminds us that life is full of ups and downs.
Right.
We experience joy and sorrow, success and failure,
Right.
and everything in between.
Okay, but how does that relate to building a learning organization?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
If we're trying to create this culture of continuous learning and growth,
Yeah.
we need to be prepared to support people through those inevitable challenges.
Right?
We need to create a space where it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
To struggle, to even fail sometimes.
Yeah, that's important.
And we need to provide the support and encouragement.
Right.
People need to get back up and keep learning.
So creating a culture of empathy and compassion
Exactly.
where people feel safe to be vulnerable and ask for help when they need it.
Precisely.
Okay, that kind of environment is essential
Yeah,
for fostering that true growth.
absolutely.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Talked about mindset, leadership, feedback,
Uh-huh.
the sweet spot of learning,
Yeah.
even incorporating elements of play and art.
Right.
But one thing that keeps coming up is this idea of Change.
Change is constant.
Yeah, and not just adapting to change, but really embracing it.
Right.
Why is that so crucial for a learning organization?
Well, the world's constantly changing,
Right?
and the pace of change is only accelerating.
Yeah.
So if an organization can't adapt, it can't survive.
Right.
But a learning organization, they see change as an opportunity,
Okay.
a chance to learn, grow, and innovate.
So how do you actually create that culture
Yeah,
of embracing change?
that's a good question.
It's one thing to say it, it's another to actually do it.
It is, and that's where leadership comes in.
Okay.
Leaders need to model that adaptability,
Mm-hmm.
be willing to experiment,
Yeah.
and even celebrate failures as learning opportunities.
And Life's Learnings 3711 dives into those qualities of effective leadership.
They do, and one of the things they highlight
Yeah.
is what they call the E4 qualities:
E4, what's that?
energy,
Okay.
enthusiasm,
Empathy.
and execution.
I like those.
Yeah, they're pretty important.
Yeah, they sound pretty essential, especially in the context of this learning organization stuff.
Absolutely. So energy and enthusiasm, those are contagious
Right.
leaders who bring those qualities,
Yeah.
create a more positive and engaging environment.
Uh-huh.
Empathy is crucial for
Yeah.
building relationships, understanding different perspectives,
Right.
creating a sense of belonging,
Okay.
and execution. It's all about getting things done,
Right.
turning ideas into action, making things happen.
So not just having great ideas, it's having that drive and follow through.
Exactly. And those E4 qualities,
Yeah.
they're essential for both individuals and the organization as a whole.
Okay, what about folks who maybe aren't naturally as energetic or enthusiastic?
Right.
Can you learn those qualities?
Absolutely. It's about fostering a culture that encourages those qualities and rewards them.
Okay.
And it's about providing opportunities for people to develop those skills through training,
Uh-huh.
mentorship, and even just observing others who are really energetic and enthusiastic.
So it's like a positive feedback loop. The
Exactly.
culture encourages it and the individuals reinforce the culture.
Right.
Right, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Now let's circle back to those performance reviews for a second.
Okay.
Life's Learnings Part 3, 12325 suggested ditching them
Right.
in favor of these interactive coaching sessions.
Uh-huh.
So what does that actually look like?
Well, instead of a top-down evaluation,
Yeah.
these coaching sessions are much more collaborative
Okay.
and forward-looking.
Right.
So it's about sitting down with each team member,
Yeah.
discussing their goals,
Okay.
identifying areas where they want to grow,
Uh-huh.
and creating a plan for how they can achieve those goals.
So it's less about judging past performance
Right.
and more about supporting future growth and development.
Exactly. And
Right.
it's about empowering individuals to take ownership of their learning
Right.
rather than just passively receiving feedback from their manager.
Okay, I like that. It sounds much more effective.
Yeah,
Probably a lot less stressful for everyone.
absolutely.
But what about holding people accountable for those goals that they set?
Accountability is still important,
Yeah.
but it's approached differently. It's about creating a culture of trust and mutual respect
Right.
where people feel comfortable sharing their struggles,
Yeah.
asking for help when they need it, and it's about providing regular check-ins and support
Okay.
to help people stay on track.
So we're shifting that focus
Right.
from judgment to support,
Mm-hmm.
past performance to future potential.
Exactly.
I like that. And Life is Learnings Part 3, 12325 also emphasizes the importance of self-compassion
Oh,
in those coaching sessions.
okay.
So it's about encouraging people to be kind to themselves,
Yeah.
recognizing that everyone makes mistakes,
Right.
and to see those mistakes as opportunities for learning and growth.
That makes sense. If
Yeah.
you're constantly beating yourself up, you're not going to take risks or try new things.
Exactly. And that fear of failure
Yeah,
can really stifle creativity and innovation.
right.
So creating that
Safe space where
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes is absolutely essential.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing change, mastering those E4 qualities,
Right.
turning performance reviews into coaching sessions.
Yeah.
But one thing we haven't really touched on is humility and leadership.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
It seems a little bit of a paradox. Don't we want leaders who are confident and assertive?
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but Life's Learnings 1-5-10 makes a really compelling case
Yeah.
for why humility is actually essential for effective leadership,
Okay.
especially in a learning organization.
So how does humility fit into the leadership equation?
Well, this source argues
Yeah.
that humility allows leaders to be more open to feedback,
Mm-hmm.
more willing to admit when they're wrong,
Uh-huh.
and more likely to seek help from others.
Right.
And that creates a much more collaborative and ultimately more effective learning environment.
So recognizing that you don't have all the answers,
Right?
it's okay to ask for help?
Exactly. And it's about being willing to learn from anyone,
Yep.
regardless of their position or title.
Right.
A humble leader recognizes that everyone has something to contribute.
If you're always trying to prove how smart you are,
Yeah.
you're probably not creating a very welcoming environment.
Right, and this source argues that humility can actually be a strength
Okay?
because it allows you to build trust,
Right.
foster collaboration, and create a culture where everyone feels valued and respected.
Okay, so balancing self-confidence with humility.
Yeah,
It's not about being a pushover.
right.
It's about being open to learning and growth.
Exactly.
But how do you cultivate that humility?
That's a good question.
It's not something you can just force on someone,
You
right?
can't force it. No,
Yeah.
it's about creating a culture that values humility.
Okay.
And that starts with leaders modeling that behavior.
Right. So if the leaders are open to feedback,
Yeah.
willing to admit mistakes, willing to learn from others, that sets the tone for the whole organization.
It does. It creates a ripple effect where everyone feels more comfortable being vulnerable,
Yeah.
embracing their own learning process.
I like that. So
Yeah.
it's not just about individual development.
Right.
It's about that culture of learning
Yeah.
that permeates the whole organization.
Exactly. And Life's Learnings 1510 makes a really interesting point about
Yeah.
the dangers of what they call destination disease.
Destination disease. What's that?
It's this idea that we're constantly striving for that next goal, the next promotion, the next achievement.
Oh, yeah.
And we never really stop to appreciate the journey.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right? You're always chasing that next thing.
Uh-huh.
Never really feel satisfied.
And how does that tie into this learning organization idea?
Well, this source argues
Yeah.
that destination disease can be a major obstacle
Okay.
to creating a truly fulfilling and sustainable learning organization.
Why is that?
Because if people are constantly focused on that end goal,
Right.
they might miss out on the joy of learning and growing along the way.
Okay.
They might be so focused on achieving specific outcomes
Uh-huh.
that they lose sight of the value of the learning process itself.
So it's about shifting the focus from achieving those specific goals
Yeah.
to cultivating a love of learning for its own sake.
Okay. And it's about creating a culture
Yeah.
where people feel supported and encouraged to explore their passions,
Right.
experiment, and continuously expand their knowledge and skills.
Okay, that sounds great,
Yeah,
but also pretty idealistic.
it is.
How do you create that kind of culture?
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It requires a conscious effort
Right.
and a commitment from everyone, from the top down.
Okay.
But it starts with having a clear vision,
Right.
setting those right expectations,
Okay.
providing the resources and support that people need to succeed.
And it sounds like a certain level of trust is needed as well.
Absolutely. You need to trust
Yeah.
that people are capable of learning and growing,
Right.
and that they're motivated to do so.
And that they'll make mistakes along the way.
And then they'll make mistakes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mistakes are inevitable. They're an essential part of the process.
Right.
So it's about creating a culture where it's safe to make mistakes.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of humility,
Uh-huh.
dangers of destination disease,
Right.
the need to create that culture of trust and support.
Yeah.
But what about folks who might be resistant to change?
That's a great question.
How do you get them on board?
Yeah, a lot of organizations struggle with that.
Right.
Resistance to change is natural,
Yeah.
but it can be overcome with the right approach.
Okay, so what's the right approach?
Well, it starts with communication.
Okay.
People need to understand
Yeah.
why the change is necessary,
Right.
what the benefits will be,
Right.
how it'll impact them personally.
Okay.
And it's important to involve people in that process, give them a voice, a sense of ownership.
So not just dictating change from the top down.
Right. It should be collaborative,
Yeah,
where everyone feels heard and understood.
I like that.
And it's about celebrating successes along the way,
Oh, that's good.
however small they may seem.
Yeah,
People need to see that the change is having a positive impact
right.
in order to buy in and stay motivated.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about those folks who might be feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all this talk of learning and change?
That's a good point.
You know, it's a lot to take in, especially in a world that's already so fast-paced and demanding.
You're right. It's important to be mindful of that and
Yeah.
to pace the change accordingly.
Right,
You
yeah.
don't want to overwhelm people
Right.
with too much information or too many new initiatives.
So finding that sweet spot again
Exactly.
between pushing too hard and not pushing enough,
Uh-huh.
and providing the support
Yes.
and resources that people need to really manage that change.
Absolutely. Recognizing that everyone learns and adapts
Yeah.
at their own pace.
Right.
And it's important to meet people where they are.
Okay, we've talked about embracing change, creating that culture of trust and support,
Mm-hmm.
providing those resources that people need to really succeed.
Right.
But what about external factors
Yeah.
that can impact a learning organization?
Good question.
We can't control everything.
We can't control everything, that's true.
So how do you build that resilience
Yeah.
into an organization?
Well, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Leaders need to be aware of the external trends,
Right.
the forces that are shaping their industry
Yeah.
and the world at large,
Uh-huh.
and they need to be able to anticipate those changes
Okay.
and adapt their strategies accordingly.
Sounds like you need a certain level of flexibility there.
Absolutely.
Willingness to let go of those old ways of doing things.
Exactly. A learning organization is constantly evolving, experimenting,
Yeah.
adapting to new information.
Yeah.
It's not afraid to challenge the status quo or try new things,
Even if it means making mistakes.
even if it means making mistakes. Yeah.
How do you balance that need for flexibility
Right.
with the need for stability and consistency?
That's a great question. It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Okay.
between being too rigid
Right.
and being too chaotic.
Right. So having that strong foundation,
Yeah.
but being able to bend and flex as needed.
Exactly. So you need a strong core set of values and principles
Right.
that guide your decisions.
Yeah.
But you also need to be able to adapt
Yeah.
your strategies and tactics as needed.
So it's like having that strong core,
Yeah.
but being willing to adapt and change as the world changes around you.
Right. And it's about creating a culture
Yeah.
that values both stability and innovation.
Okay.
So you need people
Yeah.
who are grounded and reliable,
Uh-huh.
but you also need those people who are creative,
Right.
who are willing to challenge the status quo.
How do you find those people?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And how do you create a culture that attracts and retains those individuals? It's tough.
Tough?
It starts with defining your values,
Okay.
your vision for the organization.
Right.
What kind of culture do you want to create? What kind
Yeah.
of people do you want to attract?
And then once you've defined that,
Yeah.
you have to communicate it clearly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your values should be reflected in
Yeah.
everything you do.
Right.
Hiring practices, performance management,
Right.
the way you interact with each other on a daily basis.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about creating an environment where people feel valued,
Right.
respected, and
Yeah.
empowered to learn and grow.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing change,
Yeah.
building resilience,
Mm-hmm.
creating a culture that attracts and retains the right people.
Right.
But what about the actual learning itself?
Right.
What are some effective ways to promote that within an organization?
Well, Life's Learnings Part 3, 123-25 suggests that sometimes the best learning experiences happen outside the workplace.
Outside the workplace?
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by that?
Think about all the things we learn outside of work.
Okay.
Our hobbies, our relationships,
Yeah.
startling reading books, watching documentaries.
Right.
All of those things contribute to our growth.
So how do you bring that into the workplace?
It's about encouraging people to explore their passions,
Okay.
to engage in activities
Yeah.
that stimulate their creativity,
Uh-huh.
and connect with the world in new and unexpected ways.
So recognizing that learning doesn't just happen to a classroom or a training session.
Exactly.
It's happening all the time.
It's happening everywhere, all the time.
Right.
So it's about creating a culture
Yeah.
that encourages that.
That holistic learning and development.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Creating an environment where people feel empowered to learn and grow
Yeah.
inside and outside the workplace.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about something that's been in the news a lot lately.
All right.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Some of these sources like Random Insights from 9/27/23 and Random Insights beginning 8/19/21 to 2/11/22
Okay.
highlight the rapid advancements in AI
Right.
and the potential impact on the workplace.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah, it is.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
It's already transforming the way we work.
Right.
And that transformation is only going to accelerate.
Okay, so what does that mean for learning organizations?
It means we need to be prepared
Okay.
for a future where a lot of the jobs we do today
Right.
will be automated.
Yeah.
And it means we need to be proactive
Yeah.
in developing the skills and knowledge that will be in demand.
So anticipating those changes and preparing for them now.
Exactly.
And it sounds like embracing those changes as opportunities
Right.
for growth and innovation.
It is. AI is not just a threat. It's also a tool
Right.
that can enhance our capabilities
Right.
and create new possibilities.
So it's not about resisting AI. It's
Right.
about figuring out how to work with it,
Exactly.
leverage its strength, and adapt our own skills and knowledge.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it's about recognizing that AI is constantly evolving.
Right.
So we need to be committed
Yeah.
to continuous learning
And adaptation.
and adaptation.
That makes sense, but it also sounds kind of daunting.
It is a little bit daunting.
Yeah.
How do you even prepare for a future that's so uncertain?
Right.
Well, it starts with education.
Okay.
We need to educate ourselves
Yeah.
about the potential impact of AI on our industry, our jobs.
Right.
And we need to educate ourselves about the skills
Yeah.
that'll be needed in the future.
And that could include things like data analysis,
Uh-huh.
programming,
Uh-huh.
problem solving, critical thinking,
Yes.
even creativity and emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. AI might be able to automate a lot of tasks,
Yeah.
but it's unlikely to replace
Right.
those human skills like creativity, empathy, and critical thinking.
So it's about developing those uniquely human skills
Yeah,
that complement AI
exactly.
rather than trying to compete with it,
Precisely.
and recognizing that it's a tool to enhance our capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
not to replace them.
Not to replace them, right?
Okay, we've talked about embracing AI as an opportunity,
Right.
but what about the ethical considerations?
Oh, that's a really important point.
AI raises some pretty serious ethical questions.
It does.
Yeah.
As AI becomes more sophisticated, more integrated into our lives,
Right.
we need to be mindful of those potential risks.
Things like bias,
Yeah.
discrimination, job displacement,
Yeah.
even the potential for it to be used for malicious purposes.
Absolutely. We need to be having these conversations now
Yes.
as we're developing and deploying these systems
Right.
to ensure they're being used ethically and responsibly.
So it's not just about the technical advancements.
Right.
It's about those ethical and societal implications as well.
It is, and it's about recognizing that AI is a tool that should be used to benefit humanity,
Right.
not to harm it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We've talked about the importance of mindset, leadership, feedback,
Uh-huh.
the sweet spot of learning, embracing change,
Right.
developing those E4 qualities,
Yeah.
turning performance reviews into coaching sessions,
Uh-huh.
balancing self-confidence with humility,
Right.
promoting a culture of positive emotional energy,
Yeah.
and even the challenges and opportunities of AI.
Absolutely. It's a lot to take in.
Yes.
But it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Creating a learning organization
Yeah.
isn't about checking things off a list.
Right.
It's about cultivating a culture of continuous growth,
Uh-huh.
open communication,
Yeah.
a deep understanding of what motivates and inspires people.
And being adaptable, resilient, always open to learning new things.
Exactly.
So you're saying it's not just about what we learn,
Right.
but how we learn
Uh-huh.
and why we learn.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where learning is seen as an exciting journey of discovery,
Okay.
not just a means to an end.
All right. As we wrap up this deep dive into learning organizations,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
It's this
Okay.
creating a learning organization is a continuous process. It's not a one-time initiative
Right.
or a box you can check off.
Right.
It requires a deep commitment
Yeah.
to fostering that culture of growth,
Okay.
adaptability, and a genuine love of learning.
It sounds like it's not just about the organization itself,
Right.
but about the individuals within the organization,
Absolutely.
empowering people to really learn, grow, and reach their full potential.
A learning organization is a collection of individuals
Yeah.
committed to their growth who support each other along the way.
Well said.
Yeah,
I think our listeners have a lot to think about after this deep dive.
I hope so.
Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
Yeah, just this never stop learning,
Okay.
never stop growing, and never stop challenging yourself
Uh-huh.
and those around you
Yeah.
to be the best you can be.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
And remember, that journey of learning,
Yeah,
it's best when it's shared with others.
absolutely.
So as you embark on creating your own learning organization,
Yeah.
reach out to those around you, build those connections,
Yeah.
support each other.
Support each other along the way.
Yeah.
And have fun with it.
Oh, that's important.
Learning should be enjoyable,
Right.
not a chore.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
I hope so.
Until next time,
Yes.
keep learning, keep growing, keep diving deep.
Absolutely.